Good morning, everyone. We are the Group 6. Our topic for today is all about the challenges of the global governance in the 21st century. 5 global governance gaps by ways, relevance of the state amidst globalization, challenges during the COVID pandemic. Meet our team. Our team composed of 7 members. There is Mrs. Resty Suwan, Mr. Jeremy Bargo, Miss Lovely Ramos, Miss Robin Macam, Mr. Kenneth Lato, Mr. Joshua Sabulaw, and Mr. John Marol Jago. Challenges of global governance in the 21st century. According to Thomas Weiss, there is a 5 identified global governance gaps. There is the knowledge, normative, policy, institutional, and compliance. So here, I am only discussing the knowledge because the other 4 global governance gaps we're gonna be discussing by the other members. Knowledge. What is a knowledge? According to Thomas Weiss, it refers to the lack of understanding and awareness among individuals and governments about the complexities and challenges of effectively managing global issues and conflicts on a global scale. Knowledge gaps refer to the lack of empirical information or theoretical explanations about the nature, causes of a problem that could inform policy making. Such gaps are common and result in disputed knowledge that may stem consensus about universally acceptable norms and eventually may even contribute to the creation of a normative gaps. Valuable core asset, which is both intangible and concrete, a general and specific source. It makes cooperation among member states possible where many areas are highly complex and diverse. A valuable core assets such as diversity, technology, and even education play a crucial role in promoting cooperation among member states. These assets, which are both intangible and concrete, act as a general and specific source, bringing people together and enabling them to work towards a common goal. It is imperative for countries to recognize and harness these core assets to foster stronger relationships and promote cooperation for the betterment of all. Knowledge gap is an important first step along the path of addressing other gaps in global governance. Why is it that the knowledge gap is an important first step along the path of addressing other gaps in global governance? The knowledge gap is an important first step in addressing other gaps in global governance because it is very essential to recognize that without a comprehensive understanding of a global issues, it is impossible to effectively tackle them. Bridging the knowledge gap is a crucial in promoting a more equitable and exclusive global governance system, where the interests and needs of all countries and communities are considered. This also requires a collective efforts and commitment from all the actors to ensure that no one is left behind in the pursuit of a better future for all. UN should develop strategies and policies to efficiently develop, organize, share, and integrate knowledge to achieve cross-cutting goals. In order to achieve cross-cutting goals, the United Nations should or must take action to develop effective strategies and policies for the efficient development, organization, sharing, and integration of a knowledge. This will ensure that valuable information and expertise is utilized and shared among member countries, leading to the greater success in addressing global challenges. So, okay, thank you. That's all. The next reporter will gonna be Mr. Jeremy Brago.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lato, for explaining your part. And now let's proceed to the normative that related also to the challenges of global governance in the 21st century. Okay, let's define first normative. The term normative refers to the establishment of standards or norms that guide behavior within a society. These norms influence how governance is executed and how societies operate. The normative role of the UN, which has been fundamental since its creation. As you can see, there are three bullets here. The first one, member. States are committed to review and reform their norms and practices and align this with international norms and standards. And the second bullet, normative, is the measurements of morality. Always remember that in clear and precise meaning. And the last bullet, there should be a balance between norm setting and norm implementation. So basically, the normative is the rapidly changing societal, technological, and global landscapes. These changes often outpace the development of norms, leading to gaps in governance. For example, the rise of social media and digital technologies has created new arenas for interaction and communication that are not fully covered by existing norms. And furthermore, this requires the development of new norms that can guide governments to meet these expectations. However, the process of establishing these norms can be complex and contentious as it involves balancing diverse interests and values. Because normative can increase interconnectedness of the world presents challenges in establishing and enforcing norms at the global level. Issues such as climate change, global health, and economic inequality require coordinated responses, but there are often disagreements over what the norms guiding these responses should be. And to sum up, normative challenges in 21st century governance involve the need to develop, adapt, and enforce norms that can effectively guide societal behavior in a rapidly changing and increasingly interconnected world. Additional information, I will provide 8 examples normative challenges that affect in the 21st century. The first one, inequality. One of the major challenges of the 21st century is the increasing gap between the rich and the poor. Economic disparities, both within and between countries, have widened, leading to social unrest and political instability. Addressing inequality requires comprehensive policies that promote equitable distribution of resources, access to quality education, and healthcare, and opportunities for economic advancement. The second one, climate change. The issue of climate change poses a significant normative challenge in the 21st century. Rising global temperatures, extreme weather events, and environmental degradation threaten the well-being of both current and future generations. Mitigating climate change requires collective action, including transitioning to renewable energy sources, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and adopting sustainable practices in various sectors such as agriculture, transportation, and industry. The third one, technological advancements. The rapid advancement of technology presents both opportunities and challenges. Technological innovations such as artificial intelligence, automation, and robotics have the potential to revolutionize industries and improve efficiency. However, they also raise concern about job displacement, privacy, and ethical implications, The fourth one, social justice and human rights. Ensuring social justice and protecting human rights remain ongoing challenges in the 21st century. Issues such as gender inequality, racial discrimination, LGBTQ+ rights, and access to education and healthcare continue to persist. Promoting inclusivity, diversity, and equal opportunities for all individuals is essential for building a just and equitable society. The fifth one, global governance. With increasing globalization, the need for effective global governance has become more apparent. Addressing transnational issues such as poverty, terrorism, human trafficking, and infectious diseases requires international cooperation and coordination. Strengthening global institutions and promoting multilateralism are crucial for addressing these complex challenges. The sixth one, aging population. Many countries are experiencing an aging population, which presents various social and economic challenges. Providing adequate health care, social support, and financial security for older adults while maintaining intergenerational equity is a normative challenge that requires innovative policies and societal adaptations. 7. Cybersecurity and privacy. As technology becomes more integrated into our daily lives, the protection of personal data and cybersecurity have become critical concerns. Ensuring privacy, preventing cyber threats, and addressing the ethical implications of data collection and surveillance are important normative challenges in the digital age. And the last one, number 8, education and skill gaps. The rapid pace of technological advancement has created a mismatch between the skills required by the job market and those possessed by the workforce. Bridging the education and skill gaps is crucial for enabling individuals to adapt to changing job requirements and ensuring inclusive economic growth. And that's the end of my part. And the next part will discuss by Miss Ramos.
So next we have policy. Policies are enacted and implemented to settle problems or issues. These are articulated and linked set of governing principles and goals for agreed programs to reach those goals. So policy in general refers to a set of principles, guidelines, rules or regulations established by an organization, government, or institution to guide decisions and actions. Policies can be formal or informal, written or unwritten, but they are typically documented to ensure clarity and consistency in their application. So, there are many actors involved in policy making. When the involved actors have different varied interests with regards to a conflict, policy making is difficult. For example, political dynamics. So, political dynamics has a political factors including electoral cycles, party politics, and public opinions that can influence the policy-making process. Conflicting political interests may result in policy gridlock with partisan considerations overshadowing evidence-based decision-making. So next we have institutional. So most of us know what institutional means, right? So institutional refers to the systems, rules, norms, and procedures that govern interactions and decision-making processes within and among organizations. Institutional governance encompasses the mechanisms through which institutions are managed, regulated, and held accountable for their actions. Also, this would include any failures of effective mechanisms to ensure that the law is in place. Challenges in institutional governance can arise from various factors and contexts, impacting the effectiveness, legitimacy, and adaptability of formal organizations within society. For example, the corruption and capture. Corruption within institution responsible for law enforcement and regulation can lead to selective enforcement or outright disregard for the law. When officials are susceptible to bribery, extortion, or other forms of corruption, the rule of law is undermined, and the integrity of the legal system is compromised. Similarly, regulatory capture, where regulatory agencies are influenced or controlled by the industries they are meant to oversee, can result in lax enforcement of laws and regulations. And next, we have compliance, the final challenge for global governance, and it is on the issue whether the policies are implemented or enforced effectively. So, compliance in governance refers to the adherence to laws, regulations, policies, standards, and ethical principles by individuals, organizations, and institutions operating within a given jurisdiction or governed by a particular set of rules. The compliance also identified as a global governance gap. The compliance gap in governance refers to the disparity between regulatory requirements, standards, or policies established by governing bodies and the actual level of compliance achieved by individuals, organizations, or institutions subject to those regulations. The example of the compliance gap is the peacekeeping operations of UN. Despite the UN's effort to maintain peace and security in conflict-affected regions through peacekeeping missions, there have been instances where peacekeeping forces have to face challenges in fully complying with their mandates. This may include failures to protect civilians, instances of sexual exploitation and abuse by peacekeepers, and delays or gaps in the implementation of peace agreements due to political, logistical, or operational constraints.
Everyone, I'm Robin and I will be reporting about the challenges of global governance during the COVID-19 pandemic. So, a brief history of COVID-19 or coronavirus, where it has started late December 2019, where there are reported of few cases of the mysterious viral pneumonia, where it is later labeled as COVID-19, has spread throughout the central city of Wuhan, China, where it eventually spread throughout the China and affect the global later on, because the COVID-19 has rapidly spread and it is contagious. So according to the article of Frontiers, the public health events as the common concern faced by the international community call for the joint response from all mankind. The outbreak of COVID-19 has highlighted the problems of confronting the global governance of international health, such as limited functions of between governance subjects and their limited performance, overlapping legal basis of governance and blurred core function, and lack of solutions to special problems. So, these are the problems that are being counted during the COVID-19 outbreak that are caused by the COVID-19 outbreak, meaning the world needs national governments, regional organizations, and international institutions to take action in order to solve the problems that are caused by the COVID-19. So the world needs response because the COVID-19 is a pandemic that is unpredictable, yung hindi siya inaasahan ng lahat kasi biglaan siya and unprepared yung mga tao o yung global kasi hindi nila inasahan na mangyayari yun, like not not everyone are being informed by this problem. Hindi nila akalain na sobrang magsispread yung virus and magkukos ng global problem na there are examples, and these examples will be reported by Mr. Joshua Zabulaw.
Challenges in this COVID-19 pandemic. So what are challenges that we are facing during COVID-19 pandemic? First, limited function of international organization and difficulties in achieving objectives. We analyze the performance of global international organization in the COVID-19 era. Three of the most influential global international organizations in politics, health, and economy, namely the UN, the WHO, and the WTO, respectively, are selected for case studies. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, it is urgent for the whole world to have strong method of organization to take leadership role in fighting the virus. Therefore, multilateral regimes are supposed to function and be strengthened under the background of global crisis. However, such regimes are dysfunctional and even undermined by emerging unilateralism worldwide. Second, for collaboration between governance subjects and their limited performance. Globalization has intensified economic interdependence, global communication, and international migration, giving new urgency to addressing health issues globally and urging a new era in global health governance to replace the former international health governance. The shifts and the global health law have driven it from its 20th century home in the lawmaking authorities of the WHO institution and toward a wider, more diverse range of international actors, including other United Nations, UN agency, the WTO, international arbitral tribunals, the UN Security Council, and large enterprises in health-related sectors like food, medicine, and tobacco. Governance in the more global world of 21st century has become distinctly multi-layered and trans-scalar. There are many subjects involved in international public health governance. The COVID-19 outbreak exposed the collective vulnerability against the invisible enemy that penetrate national borders with ease in the face of PHEIC. Concerted efforts are needed from international organization countries, non-governmental social organizations, enterprises, and individuals in the fight against COVID-19. For coordination between international public health governance subjects remained a problem. First, the problem of uneven global development and scarce medical materials is particular and obvious. Second, no country acting alone can ensure all of conditions for health. Third, overlapping legal basis of governance and blurred core function. Handling of PHIC may due to some reason involve the application of overlapping international laws to the same event and blur the main legal basis offered by IHR 2005 and other treaties for the international community governance of public health. These treaties do not provide for any legal consequence or responsibility for non-compliance with those obligations. Problem of institutional overload and inconsistent standard setting are already emerging in international health. Involving public health issues in trade concern faces many barriers, including institutional resistance and lack of coordination and resources. To balance health, trade, and movement of people, IHR 2005 empowers its members to enact laws to implement health policies in accordance with their own circumstances on condition that they stick to the purposes of IHR 2005 in accordance with Article 3.4 of IHR 2005. And last, number 4, lack of solution to special problems. By putting stress on national socio-economic system, the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed new tension and trades-off among policy areas, exacerbated already existing tension in many countries heavily affected by the pandemic. This has revealed problems of lack of policy integration and policy coherence between between and across sectors as well as across level of government. Integrated policy making has been critical in responding effectively to the pandemic and will paramount in post-COVID-19 recovery to realize the sustainable development goals.
Hello, good morning everyone. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Jan Marl Diago from Group 6, and my report is about state relevance amid globalization. State relevance amid globalization is the state remains the key actor in the international and domestic arenas, even with the assumption of the emergence of global civil society. States maintain their centrality as key actors on the global stage due to several factors. Firstly, they hold a legitimate monopoly over governance and the use of force within their territories. This legitimacy grants them authority to act on behalf of their citizens. Secondly, states control significant resources from finance to military power, enabling them to implement policies domestically and exert influence internationally. Thirdly, they are recognized as sovereign entities internationally, allowing them to engage in diplomacy and participate in global organizations. Additionally, states ensure security and stability within their territories, formulate policies addressing domestic and international issues, and represent their citizens on the global stage. Despite facing challenges like common instability and social unrest, states remain formidable due to their institutional strength, legitimacy, and ability to mobilize resources. The state is always from the start of its creation guarantees internal and external security. Always been the principle of the state to protect and serve people. Nakadesign ang globalization para magtulungan ang nation at state para sa kanilang common goal, at ito ay ang mag-innovate, mag-grow. It must not overlook that the entire setup for global governance is actually and currently designed by nation states, which are driven by initiatives to group together for common undertaking. Bago bumuo ng state, nangako ang namumuno nito ng nagkaroon ng bata at policy na till the end, kahit anong mangyari, protektahan ng state ang kanyang population. According to Jones, in 2000, the state will persist because the need for state has grown. Also, the local resource pools and socio-economic problems on which it based are undiminished. The state existence will continue dahil palaki ng palaki ang state, padami ng padami ang mga tao, at nag-upgrade din ang pangangailangan ng tao. Kumbaga, nag-evolve din ang needs nila, kaya kailangan na i-expand nito ang kanilang resources. Meet the needs of the people. Kahit sa daming challenges ang pinagdadaanan, nananatiling matibay ang estado at patuloy na ina-adapt mga pagbabago sa mundo.
Good morning, everyone. And to our instructor, Mr. Balawaro, good morning, sir. This is Resty Suan, your next presenter for today's report. As a continuation of Mr. Diago's report, I will be discussing to you the remaining contents of the subtopic, State Relevance Amid Globalization. Okay, we have here two keywords, so two key points that you've been hearing from the previous presenter. We have state, globalization. A state refers to a distinctive political community with its own government with asserts sovereignty over its land and people. Globalization refers to the increasing connectedness and integration of economies, societies, cultures, and institutions across the world. Kaya nilagyan ko siya ng arrow, vice versa. Makikita nyo. As globalization shapes the state shapes globalization. Okay, there is a reciprocal relation between the state and the globalization. Okay, the state either a facilitator or hindrance of the flow of goods, service, capitals, and ideas across national boundaries. So this is because the state enact laws, regulations, and policies that govern across boundaries of interactions, trade agreement, and diplomatic relations. A state can also use their political, economic, and military strength to help them get what they want globally and negotiate deals with other countries and international groups. Ang globalization naman can impact various aspects of state governance. Kaya sa sinasabi natin na kanina na merong reciprocal relation ang state at globalization. Like sa aspeto ng trade policies, immigration laws, and cultural norms, as a state adapts to changing global landscape. So, ang state ay walang choice kundi i-adapt ang kung anong trend globally. Kasi ang globalization ay walang turning point, right? A state in the 21st century is different in many ways from the past. It has significant role in providing affordable social services. Okay, meaning, the modern world state are expected to play a more active role to ensuring access to essential services such as healthcare, education, housing, and transportation at affordable costs. So, mataas ang expectation ng society as they recognize sa responsibility ng isang state na i-promote ang social welfare and economic well-being ng mga tao. Okay? So kasi 'di ba, habang tumatagal, lalong nag-upgrade ang lahat. Ang nagkaroon ng non-stop innovation, lalo na sa technology. Madali na lang ang pag-execute and yung pag-deliver ng mga essential social services natin na kailangan ng tao. Yung access at delivery niya, mas napapabilis. So, to meet the needs of their populations, kailangang i-adapt at mag-innovate din ang policies ng governance ng isang state. Hindi pwedeng naka-steady lang sila doon. Nag-i-evolve yung buong mundo, yung nag-innovate, tapos ang isang state mananatiling sa isang yung walang innovation yung kanilang policy at saka governance, hindi pwede yun. So, kailangan nilang i-adapt every time may innovation. Social services of a state in the past and in the 21st century. Okay, unahin natin yung past. In the past, limited government lang. So, ano ito? Meron lamang restricted range of services to its citizen. Example, nag-focus na lang sila sa defense, law enforcement, tsaka yung maintaining public order sa paniniwala na ang society ang may responsibility sa sarili nilang essential needs. So, hindi talaga nila pina-prioritize yung society. Next, limited scope. Ito yung services ng social services ng estate na nagpo-focus lamang sa pagbibigay assistance to specific people, hindi siya para sa lahat, such as poor, elderly, disabled, orphans, and widows. Next is religious and charitable. Social services ay malimit na ibibigay ng mga relihiyosong institusyon rather than the estate itself. Next is the workhouses and poor relief. Ito yung pinoprovide ng society as shelter to poor. Like food and work. And tsaka yung reliefs from parish or municipal authorities lamang na meron din namang limited funding at tsaka resources. Next is the limited healthcare. Mas natatamaan dito yung mga poor and rural areas. Bihira kasi ang hospital clinics noong unang panahon. So, malimit galing sa charitable organization lamang yung mga medical treatment na natatanggap ng mga tao. Or di kaya galing sa private practitioners, mostly home remedies na nga lang ginagamit. Next is the limited infrastructure. Of course, di pa ganun ka-innovate nung panahon. Kaya, pagdating sa transportation, mahirap kasi wala pang ganun na like magagandang kalsada, ay mga buildings, para magkaroon ng maraming trabaho, wala pang ganun. Kaya limited lang yung infrastructure noon. Hindi pa siya ganun ka-innovate. Next is the education for the elite. So, ito na nga yun. Sa education, noon, formal education is for wealthy people lang. And ang privileged classes with limited access din sa nakararami. Lalo na yung mga women. Kasi noon, di ba, ang mga mas priority nila pagdating sa education ay mga lalaki. Then, yung mayayaman. So, kawawa yung mga babae at saka lalo na yung mga lower class individuals. At sino-sino ang napoprovide nito? Yung mga religious institution at saka private tutors. Next is the stigma and discrimination. So, ito na ngayon. Meaning, social services sometimes viewed negatively by the society. Nag-iiba na ang tingin ng tao, yung mga paniniwala ng tao nag-iiba sa mga welfare programs na pinapatupad or mga binibigay ng institutions. Yung pinipili na lang din nila yung sino yung bibigyan dahil dito nagkakaroon ng mga like bias, nagkaroon ng palakasan na lang kumbaga sa term natin ngayon, yung palakasan. Sino yung mas malakas, siya yung mas nabibigyan ng tawag nito, tulong or social services. Yung stigma na to ay yung nakikreate ito ngayon pag nagkakaroon ng stigma at nagkakreate ng barriers sa access ng social services. Kasi 'di ba? Nandito na yung mga tinatawag na nadi-discriminate na sila. Kaya ang binibigyan ng mga pinipili na lang din. Next is, dito tayo sa 21st century. Ano bang pinakaiba ng social services ng 21st century? Okay, universal coverage. Ang aim nito is to provide universal access to essential services regardless of income, status, or background. So, ang laking pinagkaiba niya dun sa past. Dito kasi, para sa lahat. Whatever your background is, lalo na yung mga panahon na pandemic, di ba lahat, mayaman ka man, lahat kasi nangangailangan that time. So, lahat yun, walang pinipili na status or background. Bibigyan ng serbisyo. Next is comprehensive programs. Okay, building wide range of programs and initiatives designed to address various social needs and challenges. Kung dati education ay para sa mayayaman at sa lalaki lang, in the first century naman, education is para sa lahat. Ito yung tinatawag na social safety net to support the diverse people. So, para magkaroon ng trabaho ang lahat, karoon ng opportunity na makapagtrabaho pag ikaw ay nakapag-aral. Yun yung basihan ngayon. So, ngayon meron na tayong from kindergarten to higher education. So, lahat nakakapag-aral na. Next is the legal frameworks and right-based approaches. Okay, dito, nire-recognize ang social services as fundamental rights of citizens rather than act of charity. So, kung dati iniisip nila na charity lang yun, dapat gumalaw sila ng sa kanila kasi responsibilidad nila ang kanilang mga essential needs, dito naman, ang focus ng government is priority ng yung karapatang pantao, karapatan ng mga tao na makatanggap ng serbisyo galing sa mga institution or government. Okay, legal protection as well as against discrimination. Nagkakaroon din ng legal protection para sa discrimination, against discrimination. Next is diverse providers. So, nowadays, in the 21st century, napakarami ng provider. So, dati, nakatatanggap lang yung social services, usually, mga tulong galing sa mga religious groups. Ngayon, mayroon ng iba't ibang sectors ang nagtutulong-tulungan to form a greater innovation, efficiency, and response to the diverse needs of the people. Next, emphasis on quality and equity. Okay, social services, yung social services priority is the quality, effectiveness, and equity in the service. Lalo na dun sa delivery, aiming to ensure citizens receive high-quality services to meet the needs and respect of the rights of the citizens. So, dito pinaprioritize yung quality ng service at saka yung effectivity. Next is digitalization and innovation. Of course, noong unang panahon, wala naman ito. So, in the 21st century, ito yung innovation, tinutukoy dito yung innovation ng delivery of the services. So, ano ba yung at saka yung access. Easy access, we can access online. Tapos yung delivery, napakadali na lang, napakabilis. Isang click mo lang, nandyan na. Ganyan. Maraming paraan. Baga. Napaka-accessible niya and efficient para sa lahat. Globalization needs strong state with strong democratic institutions. So, ito yung mga institutions that can effectively regulate economic activities, protect citizens' rights, negotiate international agreement, and maintain political stability in a context of globalization. Napakaraming challenges kasi ang kakaharapin ng isang estado. Kaya hindi basta-basta dapat ang mga namumuno dito. Dapat may guts, ika nga, hindi lang basta talino. And dapat naka-align yung aim nito to provide stability, justice, and development ng isang bansa. Next, according to Bertucci, 2001, to ensure globalization, benefits are enjoyed equally by developed and developing countries, good governance is a must. So, paano natin malaman na ang institution ay may good governance? So, una, dapat effective ang pamamahala niya. Para yung meron siyang performance monitoring at yung meron siyang continuous improvement. Hindi yung nakasteady lang. Kasi nga, pinag-usapan natin dito is globalization. So, yung tulad ng sinabi ko kanina sa mga naunang topic or slides, no turning point nga. Yung bang patuloy nag-innovate, hindi na natin mapipigilan. So, dapat, yung pamahalaan, meron siyang improvement. Na-adapt niya yung trend ng globalization. And second, sense of accountability sa kanilang actions and decisions and also in using public resources. Dapat accountable sila. And next is, dapat may transparency in order to gain trust from the public. No to corruption. No. Para masabi natin good governance. No to corruptions and abuse of power. So, is it possible nowadays? Hindi natin alam. No? Next is participation of citizens to decision-making process, policy making, at iba pang activities na gagawin ng institusyon. So, dapat may boses din yung mamamayan. Naririnig din dapat yung mga hinaing nila. Yung ano yung kailangan nila. Dapat isaalang-alang din ng institusyon pag sila ay gumawa ng decision and policy. And next is the equity and inclusiveness. So, dapat ang policies and programs ng gobyerno are designed to benefit everyone. Masabi lang natin na good governance kapag na ipamahagi ng pantay-pantay sa lahat ang benepisyo or benepisyo ng globalization sa state. That's the end of my report. Thank you so much for listening, everyone.